Welcome to the Zero Proof Life podcast, where we celebrate choosing alcohol-free living. Together, we share experiences, interview experts, and have heartfelt conversations to support each other on a path to a vibrant, alcohol-free life.
Hello, I am Carolyn Bennett from the Zero Proof Life, and today I have with me my dear friend, my co-coach, co-owner, co-all things Zero Proof Life. I always say everything from the Zero Proof Life really did start with Karla Adkins. So I'm happy to have her here with me today. Excited.
Yes.
There are things that I probably don't even know about you, Karla, that I hope to learn today. So here we are.
Listen, I'm so glad we're doing this. On the back end, if we haven't played it already, I've interviewed you and it is totally different. I got to learn things about you and it's really fascinating. So I'm excited to be here in the official hot seat today.
Yes, you
getting
are
asked
in the
questions.
hot seat. In the hot seat. And so, because we do have new listeners and because even some of our old listeners maybe don't know everything about you, tell me a little bit about your personal life. I mean, anything that you would like to share.
Yes.
All of it. Yeah.
Oh, listen, I live in Pawleys Island, South Carolina. It's just a small coastal town. It's absolutely beautiful. And I moved here because when I graduated from Clemson, my parents had moved here. And I always came with the intention of always leaving, especially back then. It was quite some time ago now. It was touristy, or it was a lot of older people here. And it has just really grown a ton. And as much as I tried to leave, I always stayed, and glad that I did, because I met my now husband, Grady, and we have a almost 10-year-old little girl, Piper. And it's truly my greatest joy to be able to be a mom. I truly, it's one of the hardest jobs, as Carolyn knows, because I call her, she's my go-to when things are not going well. But I love being a mom, and also this job. I pinch myself. I cannot believe that I actually get to do what we do. We're, helping people find freedom from alcohol. It's really rewarding. So that's a little bit about me.
Absolutely. I love it. And, you said being a mom is your greatest joy and that it also brings the greatest challenges. So, just off the cuff, because obviously you don't know what's coming for questions.
Yeah.
How do you think, if you could put yourself back, I think you said 2014, right? Is
Right.
kind of your point where you stopped drinking and lots of things happen, and we can talk about that as well. But, if you could put yourself back to 2014 Karla into your present Karla, parenting an almost 10-year-old, how do you think things are different? How do you see yourself navigating parenthood differently, being alcohol free?
Oh, I love this question. That's a great question. One thing that I love to talk about, and anybody that is listening that has coached at our groups, they're going to chuckle because they know that I'm going to be talking about resilience. And in my coaching, I always bring everybody along with me. I just think it's one of the cool things about coaching that is different, where I do get personal. I do share exactly what I'm going through. So if I have a big thing coming up that I'm worried about and, having to put in the work, I'm going to share it with you, because I want everybody to see what it's like, as you navigate these things. And someone was asking me, they're like, what is it like now? Like, tell us what it's like, 10 plus years into it. And I really thought about it. And it was after leaving a really intense weekend. I won't name it, but let's say I had to use all my tools in my toolbox and, lean into an uncomfortable, situation. And as I was riding home, I was like, what is it that I'm feeling right now? Because was it hard? Yes, it was definitely hard. Did I have to navigate some uncomfortable situations? Yes. it it wasn't a ton of fun, but I was fine.
Yeah.
And the word resilient came up for me, and I
Mhm.
was like, I felt like what would have typically years ago kind of knocked me out. Either one, number one, I wouldn't have done it, period, to begin with. I never would have even gone to these things or done these things. I would have made myself small and say, I can't do it,
Mm.
or it would have just completely thrown me for a loop.
Yeah.
And, the word that came was just resilience. And it's such a beautiful thing. And,
Mhm.
and as you know, and I'm in the throes of navigating, parenthood and being the mom to a little girl. And that can be, it brings along its challenges. I just, it's brought me this amazing, feels like superpower to
Uh-huh.
have the perspective to know, okay, yeah, this is hard right now,
Yeah.
but I know we'll move through it. And I know it will come on top, and get through it and be able to look back on this and reflect and know that we've grown.
Mhm.
And the fact that we can and are capable of doing hard things.
Yeah.
And I love that I get to, and I am demonstrating that for her. I think it's
Mhm.
so important
For sure.
that we're not, you know, telling our children, "Oh, you have a hard day and it's wine o'clock." And it's that message that we're constantly sending
Mhm.
to our little ones. That's just not true.
Yeah.
And what I've seen is that when you let your body, when you let your brain, when you let yourself experience life as
Mhm.
life comes,
Yeah.
um, you build this strength that really
Uh-huh.
is cool. And that I bring that, into my parenting and showing her, like, yes, this is hard, but we don't need to numb our way through it. We
Right.
can feel our way through it.
Right.
And we really are building this amazing bank of experiences, that when that next thing comes, we're like, I can do this. I
Yeah.
don't want to, but I can do this too. So
Absolutely. Oh, I just think it's amazing. And again, Carla and I talk about this a lot. I wish I would have had these types of tools or had that awareness back when my kids were your daughter's age. I mean, that would have been lovely. But the whole idea of building the resiliency, building this like muscle, so to speak,
yeah.
also takes us into like the alcohol-free life. I think there's a misconception sometimes of people out there who think, okay, if I can knock over, and listen, alcohol is that big domino. We are here to to say yes, shout it from the rooftops, but it also doesn't mean that life is just going to be smooth sailing,
No.
right? Um,
Right.
we still have to tap back into these newfound tools. We still have to build that resiliency muscle. Um, and
Ab-
so adding on to this,
yeah.
it just makes me think of your book. So Carla
Yes.
wrote a book, and She Came Tumbling Down. I'm getting the title
Yes.
correct, right? Yes. Which honestly was very emotional as your friend to read it. I got very
Right.
emotional reading it. It's a beautiful book of her whole journey, the brutal, right? The brutal
Right.
and the beautiful.
Right.
Um, but I feel like there's also resilient, obviously, lots of, being resilient in there. But I am wondering, was there a specific part of your book or
Mhm.
a specific chapter or maybe even a time that you had to put it down and walk away for a while, knowing that you wanted to tell a portion of your story, but maybe you were just feeling all the feels and that it
Right.
was going to have to be the hard thing that you had to do?
Right.
Can I don't know, was there a part of that book that felt that way or maybe multiple parts?
I love this question. And actually a couple parts of the book are coming up. And yes, the book in itself, the fact that I put my whole story out there for the world, I'm like, good gravy. If that doesn't show
Woo.
growth,
Yeah.
because I started this, even as a coach, just determined to control my narrative, and I would only
Mm,
share certain parts of
right.
my story. And it just it doesn't look like that when it comes to the world of healing and really really working on things. And so really it's my whole journey. And there's a couple of points that I think were hard to write, like obviously harder than others.
Mhm.
I think when I really stopped and paused and I was like, how the heck am I going to write this chapter, was It was when I went back to drinking. I talk
Mm,
in my story about the lead up to me getting sick, and I mean, just absolutely scary, heart-wrenching, fearful time when my body just shut down. And I described that, and I went through it, and it was very emotional writing the book. When I like pulled out my um my old lab results, my old things to really kind of get fresh and get in the moment, I it was shocking to remind myself, as healthy as I am now, it was a big reminder of how bad things were and how close I truly was to not being here anymore. So as I go there, then I go, how am I going to write about going back to drinking? I almost felt like, as the reader, like going out loud, like, are you kidding me? Like, what did you do?
uh,
And I actually really wanted backstory. I've never shared this.
mm.
Wanted to name the chapter "Hello Darkness, My Old Friend."
Oh, wow.
And
Cool.
but I didn't realize you can't name chapters, names of songs. There's some like
Okay.
rights to whatever.
Sure.
But I was so bummed because it
Yeah.
truly fit
Yeah.
um going back, and again, me thinking this is my old friend, this is my old pattern.
Right.
But it was that going back that needed to happen for me. I mean, clearly I needed to um learn and understand, and it was me after that happening and really, hitting this point in my story. I described it was like going to the end of the road and you're at a T. You can go right or go left. And I needed to make a choice. And
Mm,
one direction was gonna very quickly lead me to death. And the other was I was gonna have to walk through it.
yeah.
And I think, as hard as it was to write, it was also, I felt like I was speaking up for so
Mhm.
many people
Yeah.
that do go back, and that in people and family members and friends, like, it's just infuriating. And even the healthcare providers, I wanted people to understand there's a why to that. There
Yeah.
is a why to that. And I think that's why when I learned the science, learned about neural pathways, learned about stuff, I was destined to go back to it.
Yeah. Sure.
If I, having no tools, no other awareness, no other what I was going to do other than white knuckling it and saying I'm never going to drink again,
Yeah.
I was going to fail. It was just a matter of time, and we need to start talking about this differently. So, but that was definitely a chapter that I did pause and go, man, the reader's going to be like so frustrated, want to throw the book across the room. Like, you're kidding me, right? You survived this and then you go back to drinking again. And then I think, Carolyn, there was also components of the book that, man, going back and taking people through a little bit of the history that led me to that place,
Right.
as a girl, as a young girl, so uncomfortable in my own skin and truly battling just debilitating anxiety. Um, it was emotional for me to write. It was emotional writing about certain traumas that happened to me in childhood, and but there that also brought a softness to for me and for myself to look back and really created this cool moment where I just really wanted to go back to that young girl and hug her and say, "Oh my God, it's going to be okay, and you don't have to do this," and all of those things. So, yeah, there were some tough ones, but there was few that were more emotional than others.
I'm sure. And it's been very hard for me right now to sit here and listen, silently, because there's so many times I want to say yes, yes.
Right.
I felt those emotions reading the book. I didn't, because I knew you by the time that I read it. Didn't feel the frustration that maybe you've described another reader might feel, but it is the story for many, many people.
Right.
Whatever their, and I don't even like this term, but whatever they have labeled as maybe a rock bottom or whatever, to know that it is what alcohol does. Alcohol itself continues to call to us. And until, like you said, you learned the whys and the science behind everything, um, there is that pull. And
Right.
I think it's actually even more hopeful of a book knowing that part of your story and that you allowed that part of your story to be out there.
Right.
Because for so many reasons, right? I mean, we could talk all day about all of those, but it adds that extra element of hope. Like, okay, she
Right.
learned, she had the tools, she moved forward, she created this beautiful life, she's living this very healthy, beautiful life now, right?
Right. And that was so important to me, even down to
Mhm.
the cover of the book. I remember I remember I shared with you as I was
Yes,
experiencing it. It was so important to me that the cover feel hopeful.
yeah,
I was like, so many things
yes.
whenever we talk about alcohol, and I think, let's face it, this is changing. And I love
Mhm.
that. I think the talking about the substance has changed over the past 10 years, but historically it's this dark, like, oh, like
Mhm.
hard, dark topic that comes with a lot of things. And I was like, I don't want alcohol on the cover. I don't want anything on the cover. I want it to feel hopeful, because it's a book of hope. It truly
Yes,
is. Because
yes,
I truly feel I want people to know, if as dark as things got for me, you can come out on the other side.
yeah,
And I struggled because the person that was in charge of doing the cover, I kept getting these mocked things back, and there was alcohol on the cover. It's like they couldn't get past, like, this is a book about alcohol, and I'm like, this it's a book about hope. And
yes,
so,
yes,
in a really fun backstory, my dear friend Allie, she is a photographer, and she was doing some pictures of me for work, and for launching this upcoming book, and all of those things that you got to do as a business owner. And she got this great shot of me with these cool shoes on, and it was just my feet in this picture on this bench. And it hit me, and it hit her too. And we were
yeah,
like, oh my God, that's the cover of the book. So
yes.
on the cover of the book, it's actually my feet. And it came from a good friend of mine. So I think it's cool how that transpired too. And actually, the yellow flowers, I don't know if we're probably going to have behind me, those that are
Yeah,
watching this. I have the yellow flowers behind me
yeah.
picture that a lot of people comment on while I'm coaching, but they're bright and they feel hopeful. And
Mhm.
so they kind of ended up on the cover of the book too. So I'm super proud of that and how that turned out.
I love this. I love it. Well, and all of it, everything that you just said about like describing that chapter that was, darkness, your old friend, was a little bit more vulnerable and harder to share. And we have talked about shame in our journeys and how that it doesn't, we don't want it to play a role, but sometimes it does.
Oh, yeah.
But I always like to say, like, we no longer have a secret. Now we have a story. And this is the true embodiment of that, right? Your story. So I know this is another one that's going to come out at, like, okay, here we go. But once you knew that your book, which it already has, we already know now it's made such an impact in the world, but you didn't know it then. And I don't know the, ins and outs of publishing a book, but once you knew that it was like out in public hands,
Right.
how did that feel? Wait, let me ask it this way too, because leading into our community, we talk about vulnerability killing that shame. Like
Mm,
it's so good to be vulnerable because it gives other people hope. Um,
right.
so how did it feel to put it out there, and what tools did you use for yourself on like the day or the week or the month
The
or
launch
whatever?
day. Yeah.
Yeah,
This is a great question. And it's so interesting because several things were happening as I was writing the book, and then before I was putting it into the world. And I think it's fascinating because not only was I clearly speaking about my anxiety around it, a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, she keeps reminding me, she's like, Carla, before you launched this book, you would say all the time, like, how am I going to face people? Again, I want people to hear this is, as I'm a coach, alcohol free, still
right,
battling with this. I'm still a human. I'm still a
right.
human that I'm like, when I see people at the store and I see people at the school pickup line, I mean, oh my gosh, this is going to be so hard. And I didn't even remember saying that, but I clearly said it quite a bit. So, But also I was, working with a naturopath, and we were doing all this testing. And I remember my cortisol levels came
Mm,
back, and she was like, "What is happening to you right now? Like they were off the chain. My cortisol levels were so
yeah.
high." And it was like, what trauma are you experiencing? I remember her asking me, she was like, something is happening. And I did not correlate it with writing the book at the time. I was just like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me now? Like, what's happening? But post it coming out, um, it I was bracing myself for it. And then it and it's hard to explain, but I thought I had freedom before that.
Mhm.
But there was so much healing putting that book out into the world. There was a confidence, instead of like fearful of seeing people, there was a confidence of putting it out there. It was like, I have nothing to hide,
Yes.
and this is who I am. And it has really strengthened like how I show up in the world, and not worrying like, okay, what are they going to whisper about me? It's kind of joke's on you. The girl put it in a book. So
Right.
what are you going to whisper about her?
Right.
And, so that, selfishly, like, that was an impact on myself that I was not
Yeah.
expecting,
Uh-huh.
and it truly, and I remember, this is really cool too. Like, part of me was fearful of, one of my biggest treasures, not only as being a mom, but as being an aunt. And I love these kids, and they're all teens now. And so I was fearful of them being embarrassed. I mean, I write about all of this stuff, and um that's hard and not pretty. When you share your story, it's important that you share the good and the bad and the ugly. And there's a lot of ugly in there. And I was fearful of it impacting that relationship. And it turned out to be just one of the coolest moments of, that my niece, she actually read the book and had conversations. It opened up the door to conversations with her and her mom. It also, strengthened our relationship, where then became that, because she'd known you know, I've been through so many things, like, then Auntie Lala might get it. I became more approachable, actually, in
Yes.
their eyes. And she, like, there's several that she shares with her friends, and they're proud. I mean, those are some of the beautiful moments. Like, my daughter, like, telling people and bragging to people, like, my mommy wrote a book. Like, that will never
Right.
get old for me. So it
Oh,
definitely brought so much more than I ever anticipated.
I just love that. I love
Mhm.
that. And I hear it often from people who are in the arena. We talk about people in the arena. Sometimes it is easier to put it out to strangers, to people who are going to read this book from, hundreds of miles away, rather than our family or our closest people. And it sounds like, I mean, what a journey that, you've been on with this, and how beautiful that those teenage kids were able to accept it and be so excited and so proud.
Right.
And I think that's a really lovely gift back to you for
Right.
being bold, for being able to show up with that vulnerability, for just being like, okay. And I also love how you said, like, what are you going to say? I mean, it's all in the book.
Right. I've actually had someone say something to my husband at one point, no kidding, and
Yeah.
say, I heard this. And
Oh.
I just love, because Grady looked right at him and he goes, I mean, she has a website.
Uh,
So it was
exactly. Exactly.
you're not telling me something that, you're
Right.
not throwing me off. I mean, she's
Right.
not hiding when we're not. And I just want people to know it truly was something I never intended
Yeah.
on sharing.
Yeah.
And it's truly it's where I talk about my own faith, and how it would, for me, it was God, this nudge, just even talking about it to begin with.
Yeah.
Um, and I share that in the book, and how it was, I'm like, listen, I am being obedient. I am not drinking. I am not, and I don't plan on ever drinking. I'm good. And it was
Yeah.
like, no, I truly, truly believe and know that I survived that for a reason, and I survived it to talk about it. And um, I was really blown away because it was written with the intention to help the person that was me,
Mm-hmm.
um, that, was sick and scared, and talking with the people that have read it. I love that it's just opened up the door to the people that, for example, people that had loved ones that really struggled,
Right.
brought a different perspective and insight. And so, and did a little bit of healing for them to understand, to get kind of a
Absolutely.
different view of their loved one, to what was happening and why it was happening. They're even down to, I remember working with my person that helps me with my tech world, my virtual assistant. She's like, oh my gosh, it made me, just think about like how I speak about it.
Right.
Those little things, those little changes add up to big things. So it was an amazing process. And I can't believe now that it's been out for a few years now. I
Gosh.
mean,
Right,
so
we blinked. We
right.
blinked. Well, I just want to add, I mean, your faith, I know, played a huge role. And I thank God every day that He saved you so that you could tell this story, so that it is not a secret, so that it's a story, so that it can cause that ripple effect for, like you said, not only the person who's struggling, because sometimes they don't even have access to be able to take a breather and absorb that, but
Right.
also for the people who are walking alongside them, who love them, who care about them, to see it
Yes.
from the perspective of the person who is just in the journey of alcohol, right? And in the bondage, or however we want to call it, right?
Right.
I love, and again, bringing it back to like the zero proof life. I know one thing that is important for you and to you, because you talk about it a lot, is creating that safe, judgment-free zone. Um,
Mm.
which, if I do say so myself, I think we have done a very, very good
Oh,
job of in the
yes,
Zero Proof Life
absolutely.
community. But can you speak a little bit? I mean, and you've alluded to it, and it's kind of almost like, okay, yes, I don't need to articulate it, but I would love for you to, on why that is so specific and so important to you, that whole
Oh.
judgment free, shame free, vulnerable zone
Mhm.
where we can come and just shed all the ugly of the world and be ourselves. Why is that so important to you in the
I
community?
love that question. And obviously it does. It goes back and it gets personal. And I think um, there's a few things. Number one, I take it back to the me that was scared. And I was so desperate to hang on tight to my story and this narrative. And I didn't want anybody in my world to know. I was afraid to let my doctor know, because then I'm like, oh my gosh, then they're not going to help me with other things of anxiety or other. I think that's a big thing for people. Like,
Yeah.
well, when I stop, if I tell them I'm struggling with alcohol, then they're not going to give me anything to help with my anxiety. And again, back then I was hanging on tight to alcohol's the only thing that helps me with my anxiety. And there's that fear there. That's a very real fear. It's not a fake fear.
Right.
Um, the fear of, if I tell any family members or friends, then I'm never going to be able to drink again around them, because I've opened up this door of, because it's all or nothing, right? And I know I grew up in a time, and you did too, of creating that there's a line in the sand of people that have a problem with alcohol and the other people that can drink it just fine.
Right.
I didn't know that that's just not true. And so I just was so protective. And I think if I had had that space where I'm like, I can be open and share, and there's no personal ties to me, you know what I mean? Like, I can
Right.
just share and talk about this fear and maybe get some help on what to do. I would do something about that, and obviously living in a small town where, people, the only ways to get alcohol free was traditional methodologies, which is AA. And so people would pay attention to whose cars were in the parking lot, and knowing an AA meeting was going, like,
Right.
just the whispers. And there is judgment. I mean, I
Yeah.
think we're not being real. I mean, it still carries such a
Yeah.
big stigma. I love the massive change that's happened
Yeah.
since I've stopped drinking over the past 10 years. It has huge leaps and bounds growth on the conversation around it. And oh my gosh, I just celebrate that. But there's still a lot there.
Yeah.
I was judged. And one thing about, my book is the foreword and the afterword of the book were both written by my amazing physicians, two women that are very important in my life that took care of me. And so they're kind of the bookends of the book, which is so important. One that took care of me at the beginning and the other one that took care of me at the end. And they wrote the foreword and the afterword of the
I
book.
love that.
And in the foreword, as a healthcare provider, she talks about the very real judgment that happened, when they would leave my, hospital room door, like, it's just, they were almost disgusted,
Yeah.
by, what I had done.
Mm.
And you can feel that,
Yeah.
I felt it.
Yeah.
So it's a very real thing. And I also know, just like you alluded to a minute ago, the only way for people to really tackle this is to get real about it and
Yeah.
be vulnerable and share the
That's
truth.
right.
And that might happen little by little. It doesn't have to happen. You don't have to tell everything all at
Right.
once. I came out in like little increments
Yes.
and
Right.
sharing. And
Mm.
and I always tell the people that I'm coaching too, I'm like, I need you to remember that you are seeing me now. You're seeing me 10 plus years down the road. If you had seen me, I wish I could have filmed, you know, back then at day 5, at day 10. I
Mm.
was as we say in the South, I was a hot mess.
Yeah.
I was a wreck.
Yeah.
Um,
Get it.
but it was just little change. I grew, and that growth happened little by little, and then eventually my whole story could come out. But
Right.
people need a place to share,
Right.
to just start. you
Yes.
know
Yes. Well, Carla, so you have talked about like that whole judgment. I mean, that's what
hmm
this has been, about these last few minutes. But um, you also said it, maybe not using this exact language, but I picked up on like there is another way, rather
yes.
than pulling into that, and we're not here to. There are AA and other programs are life saving. That is a given, but that other way. And that's what we try to do in our Zero Proof Life Challenge. Coming up as a science based challenge. I would love to have you, when you say there is another way, what's the very next sentence that you would love to share with people? Can
Oh
you
gosh,
access
you're
that
so
right
funny.
now?
And you just
Put
talking
you on the
about it,
spot.
I sat up in my seat taller, like I was I
Oh yeah, it's
am
your
so
jam.
passionate about this.
Yeah, yeah.
um I am so, and I think just, and stop, there is another way. I think that, and a full stop sentence on its own
For
is
sure.
so important. But I feel equally as passionately, yes, are other ways. So when we say ways, we're talking about methodology. So there's 12 step, and I like to put it in two categories. There is the disease model, and
Mhm.
then there's our model. And I
Right.
think I love talking about it that way because I think it simplifies for people, like
Mhm.
which way might be a good start for you,
Right.
And the disease model is this, where, what, I feel like I cannot help this, and this is something that genetically I was born I this way. I'm an alcoholic. They use that terminology. And again, this is what works for them. But the disease model, then I think 12 step is the right path for that person.
Mhm.
But then there's someone, and I'll speak for myself. There's a huge other path that no one talks about and no one knows
Right.
about. And why I feel so strongly about it is because I know this way saved my life.
Right.
And so I just don't want to be silenced when I think it's so important that we talk about celebrating. I'm going to celebrate any way that someone finds freedom from
Sure.
alcohol. I am going to cheer you on. I am going to lift you up no matter which direction you go.
Yeah.
But we have to understand and validate, because I remember being so scared. It was after that second time I had gone back to drinking, and it was like, I know if I drink again, it is going to kill me.
Mhm.
And one of my passion points was like, I have to find another way. I had tried, countless times at AA. It just didn't attach to me. Um, did not work for me.
Yeah.
Um, But I knew if I went that route again, I had done that. I mean, they talk about the definition of insanity. Well, was taking my own
Yeah.
advice. I had been that way. I had tried that. Did not work for me. So I was like, I've got to find another way because I want to live. And I
Yeah.
know if I
Yeah.
don't do this, I'm not going to live. And
Right.
that's where I started Googling. And I remember, coming out of being so sick and all of those things, Googling, like, where did my anxiety go? Because I
Mm,
felt this really strange sense of calm.
right.
And it was very unfamiliar. And also not what I was expecting. I thought my anxiety was going to be through the roof.
Yeah.
Googling that, I remember Googling, because I nothing about the word alcoholic. It just turned. I don't. It's hard to explain. Um, Again, but also it just didn't work for me. It didn't feel right. Didn't feel good. I didn't like it. Didn't make sense. I didn't fall into. I had a disease. This was going to happen to me. I didn't attach to that at all. So I remember Googling. Are there people that don't believe they're an alcoholic that
Mm,
don't want to drink again? Because it wasn't like I was trying to fool myself into thinking, okay, I want to create this new way that allows me then to drink. I knew alcohol needed to stop. And when I Googled that, it opened up the door to other areas. And that is where, I found This Naked Mind and read that book. And I remember I couldn't get enough. And it
yeah.
makes me excited about us doing podcasts too. I could not get enough of those podcasts. I was
Right.
just soaking them in because finally, especially when she would interview the physicians and getting answers to why I went back, like when
Right.
I did, and
Right.
not just this stuff about, oh, it was my disease and it was strengthening. None of that fit to understand neuro pathways and these ways that I had created in my brain. Like I was like, like a light bulb went off.
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
I think again, and it's why one of my favorite things that we do at the Zero Proof Life is our challenges. Because I can't help but think about, I would have done that. Oh, I would have loved those things. And
Yes.
listen, it might have taken me several times. I might have taken
Right.
a
Right.
challenge or 10
That's
in
right.
order, but to learn the language, to understand what was
Right.
happening to me,
Yes.
um, and understanding my body, understanding the substance. And that's a key.
Absolutely.
We talk about a lot. Okay, what is this stuff that we're
Mhm.
drinking?
Yeah.
And understanding those foundation points are so important. And then we dig a little bit further. Okay, then what is that? Like, what are our beliefs? Like, what do I believe that alcohol is doing for me? And tackling those
Right.
one belief
Right.
at a time. And it's
Yes.
just, it's so exciting. And I just want more people to know about it, you know?
I agree. And I love everything you just said. And again, it doesn't need to be this rub. Like you said, we want people to find freedom in whatever way they're going to find it. Maybe it's a combination, right?
Mhm.
But just the option of knowing there is another way
Yes.
is so, I mean, when we talk about hope, that gives me hope even being this far out. Like there is hope in that.
Right.
And so yes, I think it's beautiful, right?
Yes. And it
Yeah.
is. And I think that's what, um, it does. It excites me. And I hate that there's, even saying that it's controversial is to me
Right.
just silly. And
Right.
unfortunately it is because I see it,
Yeah.
all the time out
Yeah.
in the world where people
Yeah.
like combat, like, oh, and people did it to me. I mean, I
Mhm.
remember, and when I got so excited and I couldn't wait, and that's when I knew, like, I'm like, I know I'm supposed to do something with this experience.
Right.
And oh man, did I get my balloon popped several times. It was like, oh, and I mean, in the South, I know people listening can't hear, but we do this thing that is infuriating where we do this little bless your heart tilt to the head, like, oh, and I know as soon as I get that tilt, I'm like, oh,
Right.
it just is. And
Yeah.
people thinking and expecting and waiting for me to fail because I was doing
Uh-huh.
it differently.
Doing it
And,
differently. Sure.
but I'll
Yeah.
never forget Grady coming home, and I write about this in the book, but Grady coming home one night, and it was after binge listening to podcasts. And I looked at him, and it was like straight out of, the movie Home Alone, where he comes out of the house and it's like, I'm not afraid anymore. I
Wow.
was not afraid anymore.
Yes.
Because of that old verbiage that was taught to me, through going to meetings. It was like,
Right.
oh, your addiction is just, I think they even say the same, like it's doing push-ups as you're alcohol
Mm,
free. It's just getting strengthened. I mean, so I was fearful. I'm like, I know I'm doing good, and I know I feel good. And I know that my anxiety
right.
is finally manageable. I finally, because I'm not drinking, tools, guess what? They actually work. And
Right.
so I was feeling good, but I was feeling scared.
Yeah.
And I was scared that this thing was going to come back. This monster inside me was going to come back and get me. And when I learned the science, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have to live my life like that and
Right.
fear. And I wanted it exactly, that, that hope in me that I had way when I first started this. I need another way
Yeah.
is there. And, you can be thriving and living life truly to its fullest. I think we talk about in Zero Proof Life, like creating a life that you don't want to escape from. And
Absolutely.
it's amazing. And I want people to know about it.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's the perfect segue to
Yes.
just one more question.
Yes.
So at the Zero Proof Life, we say it different ways, but we talk about putting the life back in living, or creating a life that you don't want to escape from. But how are you now, 10 years out plus? How many years exactly?
I'm into 10. I'm
It's
well
10
into
plus,
10. Yes.
basically,
10
right?
plus.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm
Yeah,
in my
'cause I
10th year.
wasn't doing the math.
Yes.
How are you putting the life back in living right now?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. And I know I've asked this question, so I should have been more prepared. But I think, you know, doing ex- doing exactly what I am doing now, like you and I having this conversation. I think I'm always doing things that would have said years ago I'd never would do. My
Mm,
anxiety kind of ruled my world. I'm constantly challenging myself to step outside of my comfort zone,
yeah.
and that's something that I'm really proud of. And I think for fun, I have, picked up playing pickleball with my friends and have met some great people, and some great people that are alcohol free too. I think it's just, you know, getting out there physically and pushing myself in a way that I haven't before. And, just being present and hanging with my daughter. And I
Oh,
think those
yeah.
are the things, and enjoying, I think the word alone, being present, is putting the life back into living, just trying to appreciate each day. And yeah, that's it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you,
Yes.
Carla. Thank you to our listeners. Please check us out, at the zeroprooflife.com. We
Yeah.
have social pages on Instagram and Facebook. You can sign up for our newsletter. We promise not to inundate you with
Right.
random newsletters, but we do like to share kind of a theme of the month, or if we have something special coming. So anyway, thank you very much to everybody.
And thank you, Carolyn. That was fun.
It was fun. Thanks, Carla. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Zero Proof Life. If you found today's conversation helpful or inspiring, be sure to share it with others or leave a review. To learn more about our programs, coaching, and our community for women exploring life without alcohol, visit thezeroprooflife.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and keep choosing the Zero Proof Life.